Wow, it's Friday. Time for another Diversity Community Newscast. For March 26, 2021, by hosts Harriet Tinka and myself, Rayyah Sempala. Sponsored by Rayyah Plumbing and Heating. Here are the headlines for this week. The final list of 24 amazing Albertan women doing fantastic work in the community is released. Meet a selection of women doing fantastic work in Alberta, a selection from Diversity Magazine, Women's Day Special. On March 21st, we joined two organizations in Edmonton to celebrate UN International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. After Diversity TV Systemic Racism Panel involving politicians, school boards, and the police, Diversity TV brings to you, after this newscast, a Zoom panel to share what corporations are doing to tackle systemic racism. Now the news in detail with Harriet Tinka.
Thank you, Rayyah. Now, before we go to the news this week, a very important note. This is the last call this week to get your content in the Black History Month and Women's Day Special Diversity Magazine print. 20,000 copies distributed across Alberta, coming up at the end of the month and available online as well for free. I had no call, not even an interview. But after joining Solomon's College, I have got over 4 interviews already. Alex Adele, student at the Quest program at Solomon College in Edmonton.
Harriet, what does Solomon College do? Can you remind our audience what they do?
It's a college that I feel that everybody should go to, especially if you're looking for a job that you want to be placed right away. Mm-hmm. Now, Solomon College prepares students for a job in the modern distribution centers and warehouses. The Quest program is starting in April 2021. So that's only about a week and a half away. So gotta hurry up and register in the program. And they have 20 spaces available and they're currently accepting applications. Now, Mark and his student Alex tell us more.
More than 4. Some of them, they are second interviews because they are selecting. So that means I'm getting more and more close to the job. When I say like this, is not for small companies, for big companies like Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, Canadian Tire, all those big companies, they need a lot of warehouse associates. So this training is making us good qualifier for this position.
Of course, Alex has lots of skills, but we're giving him the Canadian experience. I think Habitat for Humanity, that was a great idea. So he's there. He can put that on the resume. He can also put our training program on the resume, and so it's relevant to those places he wants to apply to. He's already skilled. He's already has excellent customer service, but now we're making his experience Canadian, and so it's recent. And so now people they often won't consider you if your experience is from another country, unless you have something to put on your resume that's local. So that's what we're giving. I think basically in terms of reaching out to them, I think I love our program. I think we're giving them great skills with the warehouse management system, and so and there's a lot of different jobs that are using any type of tracking, like with merchandising and put away. So but yeah, so that's basically that's how we're helping them. We're giving them Canadian experience, but we're also giving them good skills. And so basically that.
So, Harriet, we actually have some big events happening because on March 21st, we celebrated the UN International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Can you talk us through some events that happened here in Edmonton?
Oh, absolutely. Now, on March 21st, every year we do actually commemorate this day. And the reason we do that is 51 years ago, a few students in South Africa were doing there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They're just basically identifying their laws, the apartheid laws. They were saying there's something wrong with that, and then they got shot. So 69 were killed. So every March 21st, we do recognize it. So in Edmonton, we had these two events take place. And they were organized by two organizations, the Edmonton Interfaith, as well as the Canadian Multicultural Edmonton Foundation, CMEF. And this was a Zoom discussion confronting inherent racism. The speaker included Dr. Alvin Finkel and Beryl Scott, as well as we were joined by Dr. Mensah. The other event that took place was organized by AJFAS, a youth conversation on understanding racism. It was presented by Robert Suraki Watum and moderated by Domina Lufuma. The International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination is observed annually, as I said earlier. On the day, the police in Sharpeville, South Africa, opened fire and killed 69 people at a peaceful demonstration against apartheid past laws.
Yes, Harriet. And also in 1979, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted a program of activities to be undertaken during the second half of the decade for action to combat racism and racial discrimination. And on that occasion, the General Assembly decided that a week of solidarity with the people struggling against racism and racial discrimination, beginning on March 21st, would be organized annually in all states.
And this is a big deal because the United Nations actually decided the theme would be on youth standing up for racism. Mm-hmm. So that was a theme this year, which was a big deal. Now, a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll learn about the work of some of the women on our Women's Day list. Now, a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll learn about the work of some of the women on our Women's Day list.
The topic of systemic racism, we have some news that ties in women here in Canada. And I'm sure our viewers saw us both doing this at the beginning.
Yes.
And they probably want to know, why are they doing that? So maybe you could explain a bit of why we're doing this at the beginning.
The reason we're doing that for our audience, so that they don't think that, what are they doing? It's actually a sign to support the Muslim women who have been being violated. We've seen a lot of things happen, them being attacked by different people, just being so unfair to these women. So that symbol was to show that we are supporting them. The Black Canadian Women in Action, BCW, is taking action to say enough. They say that they cannot see their sisters being attacked and do nothing. Their campaign is Together We Rise. BCW challenges you to post a picture of yourself, just as they did, and tag them at BCW in Action. And you can use the symbol.
So Harriet, on the issue of women, we still have some women that we're celebrating today on Diversity TV this week for our Diversity TV Women's Day special. So we want our audience to meet some of the women who made it on the list of Women's Day Special 2021 in Alberta's Black community.
You bet. This list has been ongoing from the beginning of March. We're recognizing many, many women. And last week we recognized perhaps, I believe it was 20 women.
Yeah.
And we're going to carry on the list because these women are unstoppable. We start off with Regina Beatrice Oppom. And she is a co-pastor at
Gethsemane International Assembly, Wood Buffalo, and the executive director of Rehoboth Alliance, both located in Fort McMurray. So, Harriet, she migrated to Canada from Sierra Leone with her family in January 2003, embracing Charlottetown in Prince Edward Island. She relocated to Fort McMurray, Alberta in 2010, where she worked as a pastor of administration at the Pentecostal Assembly of Fort McMurray for 2 years. You know, I actually had an interview with her in one of our Diversity TV specials, and she is a really amazing woman.
Well, it must have been a culture shock for her to move from Sierra Leone to Fort McMurray. What a culture shock. But she obviously was able to adjust. And this is what it's all about. You move from another country, you move to this country, it's a culture shock. But it doesn't mean you can't keep on going. And she kept going. She got educated. And she also holds a bachelor degree focused on pastoral studies, counseling from Open Bible College.
And in 2007, Regina and her family were privileged to receive their citizenship from the Governor General, Honorable Michael Jean at Rideau Hall. She is also a nominee of the 2020 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women's Award and a recent recipient of the Mosaic Women of Inspiration Award of Northern Alberta.
Wow, she's decorated with awards. Not only is she very, very educated, but she is decorated with awards. Very, very exciting for her. What a big deal. Now, we continue on with more women's special this month. We have Joyce Thomas.
Oh, Joy Thomas is the Vice President of the National Black Coalition of Canada in Edmonton, NBCC. Joy has dedicated 20 plus years to active community service, such as organizing Alberta Culture Days events and Black History Month events like gospel concerts, awards, and many more.
Big deal. I do know Joyce myself. Actually, from years ago when I read her name, I was like, I know who she is. And that's how it is in the community. All these women, they are quite well known in the community, which includes our next special woman.
Yes, our next woman is also quite, she's a trailblazer in her community. Her name is Morinike Iniola Olasebikan. She is a pharmaceutical manufacturing inventor, a licensed clinical pharmacist, and the owner of a Shoppers Drug Mart pharmacy in Edmonton, Alberta. Morinike is the chair of the Ribbon Rouge Foundation, which she founded and scaled into $1 million social enterprise addressing health disparities for marginalized Black people.
Now, if you met her, and I also know her as well, she is so humble. She is willing to help other people get better. I was quite impressed when I had a conversation with her probably months ago before COVID-19, of course. We went to an event together, and what she does makes a difference in the community. So continue what you're doing because you're doing amazing, amazing, amazing work.
Yes, and the next woman on our Women's Day list special is Neva Perrot. She owns a Desjardins Insurance Agency in Calgary, which serves all of Alberta for auto, home, life, and business insurance. Her passion is helping small business owners, specifically women, protect their hard work and dreams with the right business insurance package. She can be reached at www.westcalgaryinsurance.com.
Outstanding. I have met Neva. That's one of the ladies that I'm hoping to meet one of these days. Now we go to Dr. Unati Makiwane. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
So Dr. Unati Makiwane is a Calgary-based medical doctor, speaker, and community supporter. Dr. Unate is a family physician, men's health and children's mental health coach. She is also a health talk show host and keynote speaker, certified child self-esteem and transformational life coach. She works with men from all walks of life, boys, immigration, schools, private and public organizations.
Wow, it almost looks like a one-stop shop. She's almost everything. What can she not do? Dr. Unati? Wow, very impressive. Now, in Grand Prairie-based Ejiola has an ambitious drive to grow more women leaders and drive change by empowering women through entrepreneurship. She is the CEO of Simple Ejiola Incorporated and the founder of
The Cellulas Women Leaders. Ejiola is the creator of Femme Immigrants for the female immigrants in Canada, the initiator of Integrate Next program for newcomers in Canada, and the co-organizer of the Rise Up pitch competition for Black Canadian women in business. Ejiola speaks so passionately about being on a mission where #no women should be left behind. A slogan behind the SDG goal, #gender equality, her network, Decelagious Women Leaders, is built on.
That's a hashtag. We all need to use that. No women, #no women should be left behind. So remember that. You don't have to be a woman to use it. Any one of you can use it.
So our next woman on the list is Jibs Abitoye, who is a city councillor in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, and a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion. As a community organizer, she believes in standing up for the vulnerable. When she isn't being a wife and mom to her 3 kids, she is managing the Fort Black community group or running her fashion business. A very happy Women's Day 2021 to all these women.
That's absolutely exciting. But it doesn't end there. For more stories of women doing fantastic work in the community, please go to www.diversitymag.ca.
Yes, and here is a list of 24 Diversity Magazine Women's Day special for 2021. We have Tonya Holwitsky from Edmonton, Michelle Dayan from Edmonton, Janice Arwin from Edmonton, Julie Black from Calgary, Marichu Antonio from Calgary, Lee Bui from Calgary, Anna Der from Edmonton, John Raima from Edmonton, John Underwood from Red Deer, Rachel El Swifi from Edmonton, Amy Yu from Edmonton, Mercedes Melita Messenger from Red Deer, Rosbina Nathu from Calgary, Bukola Salami from Edmonton, Moji Ajele from Calgary, Jean Lehman from Edmonton, Leila Ahir from Calgary, Janet Raipoil from Edmonton, Noor Hussein from Calgary, Danica De Souza from Calgary, Tahani Yassin from Calgary, Angie Osjik from Calgary, Trisha Estabrooks from Edmonton, and Ping Ping Lee from Edmonton.
Wow, that's quite a list.
Yeah.
You can take a breather now. Now it's if you did not make the list and you're doing great work behind the scenes, do not get discouraged. Just because you're not recognized does not mean you're not doing great work. Due to interest in our first ever Women's Day specialist for the Black community in Alberta, we've now published an expanded version of Diversity Magazine final list of Women's Day Special 2021. It includes 24 women, 24, across Alberta from all race, profession, interest, passion, background, career, and what have you.
Most of the women on our list have to wrestle with the pressures of being a mom, a wife, a daughter, a serial volunteer, and still squeeze time to do amazing things in building community, in business, in nonprofit, in arts, in academics, activism on issues that matter to their community, volunteerism, in healthcare, politics, community building, and whatever you can guess.
I'm just going to assume that these women have like more than 24 hours a day, because to be able to do that balancing act is a big deal. So these women are doing this, that, and everything and still remaining sane. This is a big deal.
Yes, and we will peel out each woman on the flyer each day to share their work in 50 words on all Diversity Plus platforms, including the upcoming Diversity Magazine print. To all the wonderful women out there, please keep doing the good work even if you do not make our list this time. Our sincere gratitude to all those who helped to put the list of amazing women together.
A very happy Women's Day 2021. Read more about these amazing women for Diversity Women's Day special here on www.diversitymag.ca.
Yes, and Harriet, I'm sure our audience can see our beautiful wigs today.
Yes.
Yeah, they're probably wondering, where can they get these wigs?
These are beautiful. They're stunning. And actually, you can have a big head or a small head. It doesn't matter. These are just. So this is just showing off what we got. And we're advertising for quick fix hair. So we had an opportunity to actually go on site and see her big shop on, we'll be identifying the address shortly, but we were able to see her shop is outstanding. It's got so many varieties from long hair, short hair, artificial, natural. So you can get all of those things, products.
Yes. And Teresa just recently opened her business there, and she's the one she's the main person doing this.
Another amazing woman who should also be part of a Diversity Women list. She is outstanding. Now, this is the fashion segment, one of my favorite, of course. We did visit, as we said earlier, Quick Fix. Now, Quick Fix sells beauty products such as hair extensions. It also has a big functioning salon on 10422 118 Avenue here in Edmonton. So for more information, please go to www.quickfixit.ca.
On that note, this week we're celebrating the founders of Sita Beauty, Janet and Augustine, in Calgary, Alberta, on Diversity TV. Hear from Janet and Augustine in their own words.
My name is Janet Boahin. Yeah, we started this business almost 20 years ago, 19 to 20 years ago.
It's Augustine Boahin, and I'm a co-owner of Sita Enterprises, Inc. Sita was created or started in 2002. And we started in a small way, and by God's grace, we are where we are today. We sell African products, mainly food, clothing, and we have a barber shop where people come in every weekend. It's busy, and I know God has brought us this far. We've done so many things, and by His grace, we are moving forward.
As favorite subject, what could it be?
What could it be, Harriet?
Coronavirus Project Cool Times. Now, this is a serious topic. There's only 1 week left to apply for the working parents benefit. If you're eligible, submit your application by March 31st. The benefit provides a payment of $561 per child to be eligible parents who use licensed or unlicensed childcare between April and December 2020.
Yes, and My Alberta Digital ID is required to apply. You won't need to wait to receive your activation code to apply for your benefit, but your driver's license or provincial ID will need to be current to set up the account. Make sure it's not expired to avoid application delays. account.alberta.ca. You're eligible to apply if you paid at least $561 or more for 3 months of child care services between April 1st and December 31st, 2020. A bill or invoice is required. You have an annual gross household income of $100,000 or less, or find out if you're eligible and apply at www.alberta.ca/working parents benefit.
And that is an easy process. Some application you have to ask, they ask so many things, but this particular one is quite simple. Actually, just put in what they ask for and you're good to go. Don't miss out because the deadline is coming up.
Today we're going to Congo Brazzaville, which is famous for its resources like zinc, uranium, and copper. So we're going to be talking about the president of Congo Brazzaville.
So we are flying to Central Africa. That's quite a few miles. Now, the Republic of Congo president, 77-year-old
Denis Sassou Nguesso, who has been in power for 36 years, has been re-elected with 88% of the vote.
On another development, rich countries have been blocking the transfer of COVID-19 technical expertise, such as patents to poor countries, thereby slowing vaccination in poor countries.
That's not good, Harriet.
No, that's horrible. That is I feel like countries that have the ability to bring this vaccination should really help countries that don't have the same advantage.
Yes. And for this week, dish of the week, we're having dumplings.
Oh, food. My favorite subject, food and fashion, like I always say. Dumplings. Ooh, dumplings. I think we had dumplings last week. Did you try them?
I did try them, Harriet. They tasted very good.
In fact, I tried to make them myself at home. I wasn't very successful. So that's why I'm going to go to this restaurant and get the real McCoy. Dumplings are pieces of dough wrapped around a filling or dough with no filling and deep fried. The dough can be based on bread, flour, or potatoes and may be filled with meat, fish, cheese, vegetable, fruits, or sweets.
Yes, that sounds delicious, Harriet. And let's go down now to Crazy Jerk Restaurant in Calgary to join Chef Joshua in the cooking of this small, crunchy, bowl-like delicacy.
Oh, yum. I really can taste it already. Also, you can try the eye-catching dumplings at Crazy Jerk, which is located on 1715 52nd Street Southeast in Calgary.
The dough for the fried dumpling, right? It consists of just flour, salt, sugar, and baking powder, and butter, and water, obviously. That creates the dough. I'm just going to sprinkle it to dry it out a little bit. We'll take a piece, right about so. This will make about a golf ball size. Alright. And we're just going to lower them into the oil. Like so. We can fit about 20 in each basket.
This one is all come together and it's finished.
Also, you can try the eye-catching dumplings at Crazy Jerk, located on 1715 52nd Street, Southeast, Calgary. I have a lot of announcements this week, right? So I'm hearing that Edmonton will be hosting a very important diversity conference this summer on July 6th to 10th.
It's from 9 a.m. actually, and we'll be inviting big names, big names like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the third. And how often does he come to Edmonton?
Not that often.
In fact, I don't even know if he's ever been to the City of Champions. I still call it that. Now, for tickets, you can please go to www.diversityconference.ca.
Yes, and the University of Alberta is now accepting applications from Black high school students for the University of Alberta Black Youth Mentorship and Leadership Program. This is an interdisciplinary program that seeks to socially and economically empower Black youths. For more information about the program, go to their website. Application deadline is April the 15th. Their website is www.universityofalberta.ca.
Yes, you can get the information on the website of the U of A. Let's see. We're going to empowerment now. Empower Black entrepreneurs to lead successful business projects program.
The aim of this program is to support Black entrepreneurs by providing information, strategies, and resources to help them increase their capacity and viability to innovate their businesses and overcome the impact COVID-19 had on their businesses.
You bet. Now, the support services would equip them to drive their businesses forward and identify ways to help their business prosper through webinars, forums, workshops, coaching, business skills development training, peer supports, and more best practices related to entrepreneurship.
Yes. And now, how do we improve policing in Edmonton, Harriet?
That's a hot topic, very, very hot. We can basically tell EPS your feedback matters. Let me just say that again. Your feedback matters, and you can tell EPS this. Everyone is welcome to share their ideas and experiences at these community listening sessions, but space is limited. So please register early. Or if you can, you just leave your comment at epsinput.ca.
And upcoming opportunities to participate within a Zoom listening session with Chief Dale McPhee are on Tuesday, April the 20th, 2021 from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. and another on Tuesday, May 18th at the same time. And you can register, as Harriet mentioned, at www.epsinput.ca.
Yes, make sure you register, or as we said, put in your input. Join us, please, for another installation in our ongoing program on mental and social wellness initiative on March 25th, 2021. They do have a website where you can register at bcwinaction.ca.
So BCW in Action, excited to be a part of this. Sign up for the screening of the new documentary, which is going to be on March 30th. Stay after to hear from the panel speakers, Babe Latta, Program Specialist, Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, Jean Lehman, Executive Director, BCW in Action, Nora Poggi, Director Producer, She Started It, Connie Stacy, President, Growing Greener Innovations, Lynette Tremblay, Vice President of Strategy and Innovation, Global Edmonton.
Oh my goodness, that was quite a list of panelists. I can't wait to listen to what they have to say. Now, a different perspective. A perspective of some issues in African countries. This is a book launch, Thoughts of a Village Boy,
by Oluwadele L. Bolutife, which was held on Saturday, March 6, 2021. Hear from Mr. Bolutife himself.
Yeah, my name is Bolutife Oluwadele, and now I'm being called the Village Boy. Being called Village Boy has to do with this book, which is titled Thoughts of a Village Boy. So, which is a compilation of my writings over some period of time, which covers broad subjects of economics, of accounting, of history, of politics, of policy, and of sport, strange enough. What I want to do is the story of many of my experiences with this primary objective that to have a better society, a better government, a better people, to create a positive social change in the environment which I was given birth to. And to also let people know that the circumstance of your birth should not be a limitation to what you can achieve in life. If you put yourself to, diligent task of self-development.
So Edmonton, a suburb in Chicago, in the U.S. state of Illinois, is about to become the first U.S. city to make reparation money available to Black residents.
What does that mean?
So reparation is something that a lot of Black residents of the United States have been pushing for as payback for what happened to their ancestors in slavery.
Oh, this is a big deal. So let's see what happened. There was a decision, Dan, wasn't there?
Yeah. The decision by Evanston officials could inspire other municipalities and states to consider reparations for African Americans wronged during the U.S. brutal days of slavery. Diversity TV brings to you our Systemic Racism panel. After involving politicians, school boards, and the police, Diversity TV brings to you a Zoom panel to share what corporations are doing to tackle systemic racism. Moderated by Diversity TV hosts Harriet Tinka and myself, Rayyah Sempala. Our panelists are Tonya Holowitsky, Sky McLaughlin, and Sherlyn Trumpeta. Thank you for watching Diversity TV Community Newscast from Harriet Tinka and myself, Rayyah Sempala.
So make sure that you do subscribe, and that way you are the first person when you hit the notification button when we upload the video. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and we also have a website.
Yes, you can find us on www.diversityplus.ca.
See you next week and have a wonderful Friday. Bye for now.
Okay, so welcome everyone to Diversity TV. Diversity TV brings to you our Systemic Racism panel. We'll be involving politicians, school boards, and the police. Diversity brings to you a Zoom panel to share what corporations are doing to tackle systemic racism. We have with us today Tonya Holowitsky, Sky McLaughlin, sorry if I mispronounced your names, and Sherlyn Trumpeter. After this, I'd like you guys to maybe introduce yourselves to the audience.
Okay, I guess I'll start. My name is Tonya Holowitsky. I am a career and diversity advisor with CP Alberta. Prior to becoming a career advisor, I worked for 14 years in talent management. I've been an advocate in diversity and inclusion, but particularly in the space of integrating newcomers into the Canadian workforce for 17 years now. So it's a point of passion and another reason why I'm very excited to be here with you guys.
My name is Sky McLaughlin. Thank you for having me today. I am a diversity, inclusion, and equity strategist, and I am the co-founder of MT Consulting Group. We're a D&I firm that works with organizations on their inclusive journey. We specialize particularly in building inclusive leaders. I've got a long history in the diversity space, over 20 years in international relations and 10 years working on the ground in conflict and reconstruction zones. So I bring a wealth of knowledge in certain areas of the world to my work.
I'm Sherlyn Trumpeter, and I am the other half of MT Consulting Group. You have both of us, our whole office contingent here today joining you. So thank you very much for having us. I identify as a racialized person, and I'm born and raised here in Edmonton. My parents are both immigrants, so the immigrant situation is very near and dear to my heart. My husband is also an immigrant, so again, it's a story that I feel it's a personal story for me. I have worked also for about 20 years in the diversity and inclusion space, primarily helping international students and international relations in that space. Also having founded the Action Coalition on Human Trafficking here in Alberta, having worked in also the Immigrant Serving Agency as the Assistant Executive Director for Changing Together, a Centre for Immigrant Women, and for a number of years at post-secondary institutions here in Alberta. So my background is a bit diverse in that area, but very happy to be working specifically in this space as a consultant now.
You all have a whole array of wisdom. So we're really excited that you're going to share some of the things that you're doing in your companies. So maybe we'll start off with my counterpart CPA. I'm going to be braggadocious about that. About what you're doing in your company to really tackle this issue.
Well, with the CPA, because it's an association, which makes us a little bit more unique than when I've worked for corporate organizations, is we've got kind of a dichotomy of things going on because we're an employer. So they've created recently an anti-racism group internally that is not just overseen by HR, but it's a business partner with a representative from each business unit who is sitting on this internal, we'll call it a coalition, to help make things better and run programs to help educate and bring everybody together so we're functioning effectively internally, creating a safe environment, as well as respecting and engaging with the clients externally. Now, what my role is, I actually work with people externally. So anybody who's a CPA candidate or a CPA, they can come to me and I'm helping people throughout their careers, essentially breaking down barriers, whether it's in a job search situation or while they're working. So I provide support and tips and tricks in terms of that. In addition, we recently created an anti-racism group externally that's just launching right now, which is inviting some CPAs to join as well as members internally to decide how we can also educate other professionals, which hopefully in turn educates workplaces to do better. And this is going to be really great because it's going to directly engage employers, where in my role, I'm just supporting people one-on-one with where they are from their intersectionality and their personal story. But now we're looking at how do we influence this on a broader scale? How are we essentially influencing diversity and inclusion? Look at it in the Alberta community on an entirety.
So my colleague Sharon and I, we founded this organization to help make change in the workplace. Working with people from all around the world for over 20 years, we saw firsthand the challenges that people from different backgrounds, as Tanya mentioned, different intersectionalities, depending on what they're bringing to work. It's very difficult sometimes for them to bring their whole authentic selves to work. And it's very hard, particularly for newcomers to Canada, to even have their skills and their qualifications respected in the workplace. So from our long experience, we wanted to make change and work with organizations to help them on their journey, basically to do a better job at being inclusive. We feel that Canada in many respects is diverse already, but the challenge is, how do you harness that diversity? How do you respect everybody in the workplace? And how do we truly come to inclusion? I think I speak for us both when we feel that that's really one of the missing pieces. And that's what we're trying to focus on.
Emphasis focused on diversity, but just having different colored people or different ability people in the same room at the same time does not make a positive organization, right? It doesn't talk about inclusion. Inclusion is actually the much harder work, because you can have diversity for a picture for your annual report, but then if the people are not actually progressing, or if there's a disconnect between the leadership team and what you're putting on your annual report as your diversity glossy panel, that's also a big concern that we're trying to work with. I think when it comes to racism in Canada, and when we're talking about organizations, we have to, one of the things that the frame of mind that we're coming at it is racism is a system design. It is not an accident. It is not a flaw. So those are the things that when we're working with organizations, we're working with how do we dismantle the racism that's already there? Because it affects people, and it affects people it affects everybody at the organization. Obviously, it affects people of color differently, but everybody is affected through racism. But if we assume that racism already exists, then there's a much better point of trying to move and trying to address racism that is in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sharon. And when you have a leadership that starts from that premise and accepts that, it's much easier to dig into the anti-racist work and make change. But sometimes the work has to happen at the top first. We've certainly found that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to echo what both of you have said as definitely being a truth, and forgive me for not mentioning it. So one of the things that we offer is a psychometric assessment called the IDI, which I'm sure the two of you are very familiar with. And for those of you who aren't aware, that's the Intercultural Development Inventory, as well as intercultural conflict style. That's another assessment that we do. And it's looking at things through a continuum of what is your capability of dealing with different, right? And so this continuum goes from monocultural to essentially diverse thinking. And when we look at things from a systematic perspective, what you're really looking at from an organizational perspective is how effective can we deal with different? And it shows up in terms of how innovative a company can be. Because if you can't deal with different, you certainly can't be innovative. Because to be innovative, you have to handle difference. But the thing about system, and I know that Sky and Sherilyn, you'll get into this, is it is exactly what you said. It's inherited, it's created. And so racism as a result is naturally there. The challenge is that a lot of people don't understand, first of all, what systematic racism even means in the first place. So you get a significant amount of defensiveness around it. The word racism to white people, they equate with being a member of the KKK or a skinhead, which obviously I'm not, so therefore I can't be racism. So you've got a lack of recognition, a lack of understanding, a lack of education in the space in the first place. And so there's a lot of training and awareness that needs to come at it. And you talking about it being top down is really important. I find that always the second barrier is you can get the top to buy in. You usually can get the front line to buy in because they're the ones who experience the most severe level of victimization. But then you have the in-between, and it's the middle management. And honestly, in my opinion and observation, and in talking with other academics, they're the ones who usually cause the most harm. And that harm, Sherilyn, you mentioned how the harm is really to everybody. It's so true. I've been talking to people who are trying to be allies and are trying to speak up. And the reality is there's a professional consequence when you do stand up. Whether you're BIPOC yourself or you're acting as an ally, there can be severe professional consequences. And I've got people, because I'm older and my friends are getting older, who are now suffering from complex PTSD, because I've got one girlfriend, for example, she was the first woman who was in an IT department at a bank in the 80s. She was also the first woman of color to do that. So not only was she the first woman, but she was the first Black person. She was the first woman, first Black person to work in commercial banking in the 80s. And so she's experienced, in some ways, she's a trailblazer, right? And this isn't the only time she's experienced it, but she's the first one in. So she gets the full brunt of the kapow of the situation. Well, now 80s, 90s, 2000s, we're now in the 20s. So think about how many times, how many jobs she's been exposed to this. And so now she's experiencing and being therapy for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So the impact of racism cumulatively throughout somebody's life is very severe. Mm-hmm. And I believe it shortens people's lifespans. I can't, begin to describe how important it is, this discussion, and that you're having us here to talk about this today.
Thank you, Tonya. And what I'm hearing from Charlene and Tonya goes into the question we're going to ask next, which was, what can corporations do? So I'm hearing from Charlene, she's saying inclusion, and Tonya is saying, having, I don't know what you called it, the identification metrics, the ID.
Yeah. Well, we'll say IGI. It's the intercultural development inventory. Yeah. But it's really developing competency in being able to deal with difference.
So right now you're saying corporations should have these in place if they want to have more diversity within their organizations.
It's just a small thing. Just a small thing.
So this next question actually goes into that. What can corporations do to be more inclusive, to have more diversity within their workplace, not just as a performance, but as an active working force?
Well, it turns out many, many, many things. There's a long list of best practices. But where we like to start as consultants with organizations is usually doing what we call a current state assessment. And that's really trying to get a picture of where is the organization at. So after we've determined, is the leadership on board? Are they really committed? Do they understand that racism is systemic and that their own organization will have challenges for various people? We turn to policy and we look at what do they have written? What are their policies? What are their processes? And we work through that and we benchmark that against the data. And Sherilyn is quite an expert at data. So I think I'll let her talk for a minute about how important it is to gather data from the organizations, because you need both of those, the policy, the process, but then also the data, to really get a full picture of where an organization is at. And if you don't know where they're at, it's very hard to help them improve upon their journey.
Yeah, and so this is, I have two accountants, two CPAs on the line, so everybody knows how important it is to measure. And the IDI is a fantastic tool to actually measure an individual as well as an organization's openness and willingness to have an inclusive and have diverse viewpoints valued at that. Data, what gets measured gets done, right, at the end of the day. And I think that if we can look at absentee rates, if we can look at turnover, if we can look at advancement in the company, who's advancing? You might have, for example, many 50% women, but if they're all in receptionist / administrative roles, are they really progressing through the company? If the leadership is all men, for example, that's not 50% distribution of the power of the company. So we really are trying to look at what are the positions and have an idea of who actually who holds the power within the organization, and how do viewpoints get brought up and get challenged, but then also get accepted, and whose ideas are being listened to in the organization. So I think those are some very broad ideas of data. What we're trying to do is help the organizations come up with data points that make sense to their industry and to their business. So if it's the vendors that they're using, for example, how many of them are BIPOC owned? If it is, so it's looking at their whole pipeline of their ecosystem of their organization. So everything from their vendors to their clients, who are they serving? Who's on their board? So there's a lot of different data points that we can look at, and we work with organizations to identify what are the key points for them. And that is it's a really good starting point to speak on.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple other things that, I think if we get into the operational side, some of it is policy. So, I'm going to give an industry as an example because I'm familiar with it. So the recruiting, industry, so the headhunting executive search industry, some firms are exceptional at being diverse and representing new immigrants, for example. And some are not as good. And they may have the policies in place for it. They may have the policies on each and everybody's desk. They may have ethics in their mission statement, but it's a commission environment. And some commission environments are very particularly difficult. So if I've got a commission environment where that's the only way I make money, and maybe I'm on a draw, so I get a basic base salary of $45,000. So I have to sell $45,000 to cover my salary. Anything else I get is going to be now my commission. So if I want to make a living, like a really decent living, I got to be out there selling, right? So our policy is not racism. We don't do that. So we're going to turn down a job order if they want somebody of a specific background, or if we're going to say needs Canadian experience, right? Or I'll take somebody from South Africa, the UK, Ireland, but not from Nigeria. I don't want somebody from the Philippines, because we end up in these situations where this. But if I have $45,000 that I owe to the company and I didn't sell last month, so now I'm starting off with owing the company $90,000 before I even get a bonus, does that person then turn down the job order that is being requested that is racist? And the answer is going to be no, they're not, because they have to make a living and we can't be indebted. So if a structure like that is set up in a way that is going to promote racist behavior, you have to really look at what are we doing, because you can have all the right policies in place and it's not going to impact that. And the representation is really, really critical. And if you don't have representation in the right place, it's definitely, I've got nowhere to look for. But the other thing is you have to have the support systems for the representation. So we're not having nominal hires. You know, I remember working with a client recently who disclosed to me that he was competing for a senior manager position and they went with somebody else. And when they declined him, they said, you know what, it's really too bad because you would have been such a good diversity hire, right? Now, talking about a microaggression, but can you imagine hearing that? And then, of course, what he says to me later, he said it was a blessing because he took a job elsewhere, which values him as a professional. But then what he was saying to me is always in the back of his head was, am I worthy of the position I'm in, or did I get it just as a product of me being BIPOC? And so you can have the representation, but you also have to have things in place to make that person feel worthy and to make them feel safe. Because if you're the first, you can be the first in and experience the most terrible experiences, even though you're that first number. So I think safety in the environment is really important too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you've all dismantled a very, very big topic that we are discussing today. I know in an organization that I worked in, when people applied for jobs, their names would be taken out and it would be, they would just be called a number. That way you would know what nationality that was. So that was the policy that they identified for them so that they can hire the right people, the ones that are qualified, not based on race or based on the last name. Because sometimes you see the last name, then people are hiring, they think, well, I don't want to hire this person because of the name and that's so on. So what they implemented in the system is everybody will come in and they'll change their name, HR will change their name into a number. So each person was identified as maybe 1, 2, 3 and so on. So the hiring manager would only look at the number and the application. So that was one of the policies they implemented. And you've all discussed so many great points. So before we end, I really would like each one of you to just have your takeaways, maybe what you feel companies should, in addition to what you said, you don't have to repeat everything you said, but maybe add on to what you'd like as some takeaways for our audience so that we can feel like there is hope, so to speak.
Well, I guess I'll start. I would end with what I think is a hopeful note that, you know, we can make change, but I think what we need to keep in mind is that racism doesn't just disappear. It isn't just going to disappear because we have a positive attitude. It takes hard work, and to dismantle any kind of oppressive system takes even harder work. And so I think for an organization to be successful, there's so many best practices, and there's consultants and agencies that you can work with to help you on the journey, but it's a continued commitment, like a emotional, spiritual, mental, physical commitment to go and dismantle that system on an ongoing basis. And if somebody commits to that, then I think we'll see phenomenal change.
I'll let Tanya have the last word, so I'll go next. I just want to focus on the idea of self-care, especially for the people that, especially BIPOC individuals, and really encourage people to seek out and utilize the benefits that they have at their organization. When you're looking at a job, I think I would look definitely at the benefits to see what's covered, and don't be afraid to use them. I think it's especially for a lot of immigrant immigrant people, there's a stigma attached to seeking mental health resources. But again, if we go back to the point where racism is it's a system design, not a flaw. There's nothing wrong with you. You are trying to survive. So going back to Tanya's point about just being able to survive to pay the rent. Sometimes you just have to stick it out in an organization, and you have to be able to take care of yourself in that regard. So I really want to encourage people to take good mental health. And if you have an organization that you think that should know about these resources, there's a lot of different organizations that you could connect them with. If you're in a place of power in your organization, speak up. It shouldn't just be on BIPOC communities, but if you are white, speak up and be an ally. It does take a lot of courage as well. But I have to say, in over 20 years of doing this, I feel now is the time to be doing this kind of work, because I feel that as a whole, society is much more aware of this. And so I'm hopeful in that regard, that I think that we are going to be seeing a lot of changes in the next 5-10 years, more than we've seen in the past 2 decades at least.
Mm-hmm. And I really am going to just reiterate a lot of what everybody said. So I think we are in a position of privilege right now for the best of the worst reasons. I think that the Black Lives Matter movement has just push things to the forefront. And for everybody who made Black Lives Matter happen, as a diversity advisor, I actually can't even emphasize enough how grateful I am for it. One, I've learned new language, and I've been in this space for a long time, but it's brought awareness and conversation to the forefront that those of us in diversity have been banging our head against a wall to make happen. And so all of a sudden the doors and the windows are open, and it's so thrilling and it's so exciting. One of the things that I would love to see is for there to be some training for white people when they're called out for microaggressions on how to take ownership without becoming either defensive, angry, at all the ways that impede on growth. And I think that that needs to actually start to become a part of diversity training. And, and really it's the onus is on somebody like me who is also white to help coach and lead in that space. But there really needs to be a way of making people take ownership without becoming defensive of shame, because shame is not the best teacher, right? Growth is the best teacher. And that is, for me, what I think is the next step that's necessary to kind of push things forward.
You've all really identified some really, really great points from meeting people where they are. I do like how companies should meet, look at the current state and see what's going on, look at the policies, look at all those things that you've mentioned, your self-care. There's so many things that you have unpacked. And I'm so grateful for you being here and sharing all your points. So lots of takeaways. And I know this conversation is only the beginning. I'm hoping that you say yes when we will ask you to come again and continue on with the conversation, because speaking to you has given me hope. Sometimes these subjects tend to be very awkward for most people, but you've made it so comfortable to speak on, and you've given me hope. If nothing else, I feel hopeful, I feel excited, and I know that this conversation will make a difference in the community and anybody who's listened to it. So thank you so much for taking the afternoon and being here and sharing your wisdom.